In the village of Eldara, nestled between green hills and fertile plains, there lived a woman named Sika. She was a beautiful food seller and her cooking was the best in the whole village. Everyone called her Sika the cook because her food was so tasty that people came from all over to eat it. Sika was known as the best cook. Her food stall was the heart of the village square, and her kindness made her beloved by all. Sika had faced many hardships in her life. A few years after their marriage on his travels, her husband became a victim of an accident. After her husband's death, she had no one to help raise her daughter Zelena. Despite the difficulties, she never faltered. Her food brought joy to the people of Eldara. And her love for Zelena was the driving force behind her hard work. Zelena, a wide-eyed girl of 10, watched her mother every day with admiration. Sika was her world, a pillar of strength and love. Together, they lived peacefully, and while the shadow of hardship loomed, it never dampened the warmth of their home. One market day, a young man named Femi, well known for his energetic spirit, visited Sika's stall. He smiled as he ate her food, and as always, he praised her cooking. But later that afternoon, Femi fell gravely ill. His family rushed him home, but it wasn't long before his condition worsened. He began vomiting blood, a sign that could mean only one thing in Eldara: poison. Whispers spread like wildfire. Sika's food did this, the villagers said. The fear gripped them, twisting admiration into suspicion. That night, Femi died, and by morning, the entire village believed Sika had killed him. Panic swept through Eldara, and people gathered at her stall, their faces twisted in anger. They didn't give her a chance to explain. "Murderer," they shouted, throwing stones at her. Sika, confused and heartbroken, tried to plead her innocence. But her words fell on deaf ears. Even the elders, who once praised her food, stood silent, afraid of the growing mob. In their frenzy, the villagers stoned her until she lay lifeless on the ground. Little Zelena watched in horror, her screams drowned out by the chaos. Sika, the kind woman who had fed the entire village, was gone. And Zelena, left with nothing but her grief, was taken in by her uncle Jonas in a nearby village. Years passed, and Zelena grew into a strong young woman, but the memory of her mother's death never left her. Though Uncle Jonas and his family treated her well, Eldara called to her. She couldn't shake the desire to return. To clear her mother's name, and to reclaim the legacy that had been stolen from them. At 18, Zelena packed her few belongings and returned to the village of Eldara. The streets, once familiar, felt strange and distant. People whispered as she passed, recognizing her as Sika's daughter. Undeterred, Zelena set up a food stall in the same spot her mother once worked. She hoped that the villagers had forgotten the tragic events, that they would give her a chance. But days went by, and no one came. Zelena's food, just as delicious as her mother's, sat untouched. The villagers still believed the rumors, and fear kept them away. They didn't dare approach her stall, and even when she smiled and invited them, they hurried past, their eyes filled with suspicion. One evening, after another long day with no sales, Zelena walked home, her heart heavy with sadness. The villagers' whispers followed her, and the loneliness she felt was overwhelming. As she trudged down the quiet road, a hunched figure emerged from the shadows. It was an old woman with glowing eyes, her presence unsettling. "Why do you cry, child?" the old woman asked in a soft but dark voice. "Zelena, though uneasy, answered. They won't buy my food. They still think I'm like my mother. The woman nodded knowingly. Yes, Sika. The villagers still fear her. But their fear is not only of what they think she did. She paused, her eyes gleaming in the dark. Something is missing from your food. Zelena blinked, confused. I cook the best I can, just like my mother. The woman smiled, showing crooked teeth. It's not about taste, child. There is something special you must add. Zelena hesitated, unsure whether to trust the strange woman. What do you mean? The woman leaned in closer. The hair from your most private body parts, she whispered. Use it to clean the food. And mix a little of this black substance into it. She handed Zelena a small calabash filled with a strange powder. Zelena recoiled in disgust. No, Zelena said, shaking her head. That's horrible. The woman chuckled, her laugh cold and unsettling. Your mother thought the same, and look what happened to her. But I warn you, child. If you want to survive, you must do what is necessary. Zelena stood there, torn between fear and desperation. Could this dark path be the only way to break the curse of her mother's death? Zelena couldn't sleep that night. The old woman's words echoed in her mind. She didn't want to follow the same path as her mother. But the thought of losing everything, her future, her survival, made her heart ache with fear. As dawn broke, Zelena made her decision. She couldn't live like this anymore. With trembling hands, she took the old woman's advice. She used her pubic hair to clean the food, and she mixed the black powder into the dish. Her stomach churned with shame, but she forced herself to continue. When she opened her stall that morning, she waited nervously, unsure of what would happen. To her surprise, people began to approach. Slowly at first, but then more came, asking for bowls of her food. Zelena watched in disbelief as they ate and smiled, complimenting her on how delicious it was. By the end of the day, Zelena's stall was empty. The food that had gone untouched for so long was now the talk of the village. Soon, everyone was raving about Zelena's cooking, and her stall became the busiest in Eldara. Word spread, and people from nearby villages came to taste her famous meals. With her newfound wealth, Zelena built a large house, the finest in the village. Her success grew, and soon, she was the most respected food seller in the area. But despite her prosperity, Zelena never let anyone else cook. She kept the secret behind her success hidden, knowing that if the truth ever came out, it would destroy everything. But as the months passed, the weight of her decision gnawed at her. No matter how much success she gained, a shadow lingered over her heart. She had followed the witch's advice, but at what cost? Deep down, Zelena knew that her success was built on something dark. One night, as she sat alone in her grand house, a familiar chill filled the air. The lights flickered, and from the corner of the room, the old woman appeared once more, her eyes gleaming in the dark. It's time, the witch said, her voice sending shivers down Zelena's spine. Time for what? Zelena asked, though she feared the answer. The witch smiled, her crooked teeth glinting. You didn't think your success would come without a price, did you? We've given you wealth, power, and fame. Now it's time to pay us back. Zelena swallowed hard, her heart pounding. But I've done everything you asked. Isn't that enough? The witch shook her head. No, child. The small sacrifice you made was only the beginning. Now, we need something more. We need your womb. Zelena gasped, her heart racing. My womb. The witch's smile faded, her eyes growing darker. To keep your success, you must give up the chance to have children. You will never have a family of your own. That is the price you must pay. Zelena's hands trembled. She had dreamed of having children one day. Of filling her grand house with the laughter of a family. But now, she was faced with an impossible choice. Sacrifice her future for her success. Or lose everything she had worked for. With her heart heavy and her mind in turmoil, Zelena stood at the crossroads of her fate. Knowing that whatever choice she made, the consequences would haunt her forever. Zelena stood in stunned silence as the witch's demand for her womb hung in the air. The thought of never having children, a family of her own, shattered her. Her heart raced as she realized how much she had already sacrificed for her success, but this was too much. She couldn't give up the dream of one day filling her grand, empty house with the laughter of children. No, Zelena said firmly, her voice trembling but resolute. I won't give you my womb. I can't give up my future for this. The witch's expression darkened, her glowing eyes narrowing with fury. You think you can refuse me, she hissed, stepping closer. You've made a bargain, child. Your success comes at a price, and you will pay it, one way or another. Zelena took a step back, her hands trembling. I'll find another way. I won't be trapped by your curse. The witch let out a chilling laugh, the sound echoing ominously through the room. Another way? Foolish girl. You've already tasted the power I gave you. Without me, you are nothing. If you refuse, everything you've built will crumble, and you'll be left with nothing. Zelena clenched her fists, trying to push down the fear rising in her chest. I don't care. I won't let you control my life. I'll leave if I have to. The witch's smile twisted into a sneer. You will regret this decision, Zelena. The moment you turn your back on my offer, you will lose everything. And when the villagers find out the truth, they will cast you out, or worse. With that, the witch vanished, leaving Zelena alone, her threat lingering in the air like a curse. Zelena felt a chill run down her spine, but she stood her ground. She had made her choice, and there was no turning back now. Life in the village continued as usual for the next few days. But Zelena couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. The witch's warning echoed in her mind, filling her with dread. Despite her best efforts to carry on, the shadow of fear followed her everywhere. Unbeknownst to Zelena, one of the village women, Fiona, had grown increasingly jealous of her success. Fiona, whose own food stall had once been popular, watched with envy as Zelena's business flourished. The more Zelena prospered, the more Fiona's resentment festered. Determined to uncover Zelena's secret, Fiona decided to keep a close watch on her. One evening, when Zelena thought she was alone in her home, Fiona crept around the side of the house, peeking through a small crack in the wall. What she saw left her frozen in shock. Inside, Zelena was preparing her food. But what caught Fiona's attention was the strange ritual. She watched in horror as Zelena used her pubic hair to clean the food and sprinkled the black powder from the small calabash into the dish. Fiona gasped and stumbled back, her heart racing with disgust and fear. Witchcraft, she whispered, her mind racing. Without wasting a moment, she ran to the village elders, determined to expose Zelena's dark secret. The next morning, Zelena woke to find the village square filled with angry villagers. The elders stood at the front, their expressions grim. Fiona, with a self-satisfied smirk, pointed at Zelena. "I saw her with my own eyes," she declared. "She's been using witchcraft to bewitch us all." Zelena's heart sank as the villagers murmured in agreement, their fear and anger growing. She knew what was coming. The head elder stepped forward, his voice stern. "Zelena, you have been accused of practicing witchcraft. We have summoned the oracle, and she will decide your fate." The oracle, an ancient woman known for her wisdom, arrived at the square shortly after. She looked at Zelena with sad eyes, sensing the dark magic that had been at play. "You have sinned greatly, child," the oracle said, her voice soft but firm. "But I will give you a choice. You can either comply with the witch's demands and keep your business, though it will ultimately cost you your life. Or you can leave this village and never return." Zelena's stomach churned as she realized the gravity of her situation. The witch's curse had caught up to her, and now, she faced an impossible choice. Keep her success at the cost of her soul, or leave everything behind and start over in a place that didn't carry the weight of her mother's death. The village watched her closely, waiting for her decision, but in her heart, Zelena already knew what she had to do. The elders, the oracle, and the crowd all watched in silence as Zelena's fate was sealed. Tears welled in her eyes, but she held her head high, refusing to let them see her break. "I will not comply with the witch's demands," Zelena said, her voice shaky but firm. "I choose to leave." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The villagers, already suspicious and afraid of her, stepped back as if her very presence was cursed. The head elder, a man who had once known Sika well, nodded gravely. "So be it," he said, his voice echoing across the square. "From this day forward, you are banished from Eldara. You may never return, and your name will be remembered as a warning to all." Zelena's knees felt weak, but she didn't falter. She turned to leave, her heart breaking as the memories of her life in the village, both beautiful and tragic, flooded her mind. As she walked through the village square, tears streamed down her cheeks, but she refused to look back. The house she had built, the success she had fought so hard for, all of it was now behind her. The villagers, including Fiona and the other woman who had envied her, whispered among themselves as Zelena disappeared down the dusty road leading out of Eldara. They had feared her, hated her even, but there was also a sadness in the air. They couldn't deny that Zelena, like her mother before her, had been a victim of circumstance, of fear, envy, and dark forces beyond her control. In the years that followed, Zelena's story became a cautionary tale in Eldara. Mothers would tell their daughters about the fate of Sika and Zelena, warning them about the dangers of ambition, jealousy, and the temptation of dark power. Zelena's name became synonymous with the price of witchcraft. And the villagers, though they moved on, could never forget the young woman who had walked away from everything in search of freedom. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below.